So when I was writing something on the prestigious Stanley Kubrick, I got to the point where I needed to talk about The Shining. I went off on a long tangent that became so incredibly extensive that I decided to finish it as a completely separate essay. Also, just a quick disclaimer, I say stuff like Kubrick does this, but I mean that in a more encompassing term for the whole cast and crew of his films, as none of his films would be possible without them. So without further ado, here it is.
If you're looking for a quiet, remote family getaway, look no further than the newly renovated Overlook Hotel. With our famous garden maze and beautifully appointed interiors, there's a surprise around every corner. Our staff is hard at work to make you feel welcome. The Overlook Hotel. Come stay with us forever and ever.
The first time I watched The Shining was on a cool October evening with my mother in the 4th grade, and I passed out about halfway through. Then I finished it while putting away dishes like a week later. A few months go by, and then I finally get the film on Blu-ray. So considering the film was pretty quiet, I put it on the living room TV at around 6 in the morning, and I fell asleep again. What the hell? Then just recently, literally, it was like 2 days ago, I just rewatched it for the first time in like 3 years, and I ate it all up. I think this is my favorite film of all time. Now, some people think this film is boring, and considering that it's literally 3 people in an empty hotel for 2.5 hours, I could see why. At least until this previous rewatch. The film's pacing couldn't be anything more than masterful, and, in my opinion, it's in part of the tonal consistency that Stanley Kubrick excels at. He utilizes a variation of something I call the Jaws theory. See, in the opening scene of Steven Spielberg's Jaws, a random girl that us, the audience, has no relationship with, gets attacked by a hidden something lurking beneath the surface while at the beach. Now, though the scene is pretty basic within itself, it perfectly sets up the following scenes that take place in that setting, in Jaws' case being the beach. Now, from that point onward, we are on the same page as the main characters who feel a sense of unease whenever they are or witness someone else at the beach, especially if in the ocean. Now, the way Kubrick uses this effect in The Shining is that instead of setting the tone for a main setting, which now will be the Overlook Hotel, it sets the tone for the entire film that follows. The first collection of shots that act as a backdrop for the simple opening credits could also seamlessly fit in with a well-directed nature documentary. It looks as if they're showing off the beautiful lakes and forests and mountain ranges that surround the journey of wherever the small little minuscule car is going. Then eventually, we get there. The humongous and beautiful Overlook Hotel looming over a forest. Even succeeding that when Jack Nicholson as Jack Torrance, some real PTA work, enters the hotel, it is beautiful. Well, that doesn't sound like it sets the tone for a horror film at all. Actually, if this wasn't made by such a character, it would be used to set a false sense of comfort and somewhat normalcy, therefore shocking you when something absolutely absurd happens, a la Midsommar. This is Stanley Kubrick we're talking about. Stanley Kubrick doesn't pull the false hope trick. No. Much rather, he puts a simple yet haunting opening theme composed by Wendy Carlo and Rachel Elkind simply titled The Shining. Ripped straight from IMDb, this terrifying sequence of notes was based on Dreams of a Witch's Sabbath from Symphonie Fantastique by Hector Berlioz and a traditional requiem entitled Dies Irae. Alexa, what does Dies Irae mean in English?
Here is what I found. DDS is usually defined as...
Alexa, what does Dies Irae mean in English?
From Wikipedia.org. In 1988, IBM introduced a drive for 2.88 megabytes.
Alexa, what does Dies Irae mean in English?
I don't know that
Oh my god. Dies Irae translates to Day of Wrath. That's what Google Translate says. I don't know how reliable that guy is. So anyway, there is a whole video explaining why that specific sequence of notes is terrifying and gets under your nerves, and I'll link in the description below for those interested in the topic. But after that melody ends, a collection of unsettling sounds fill the space that sits in between the first chorus and the second chorus. If you can call whatever that weird synth trombone sound that. But yeah, that's right, the music repeats. Now, that opening title piece is pretty much the only music that was originally composed for the film. Hell, even the off-putting sound effects are from a trilogy of mid-20th century works called De Natura Sonoris by Polish composer. I am not going to attempt to pronounce that, but his name is on the screen. The title track is kind of structured like a normal song. Chorus, verse, chorus, bridge, coda. I mean, if you could call whatever those sounds are verse. I mean, can you even call this a song? Now remember how I stated earlier that if it were literally any other filmmaker, they'd just use the trick of false normalcy and comfort to subvert the audience's expectations? Well, Kubrick has done that. Just not in The Shining. A prime example is the opening of A Clockwork Orange. The film opens with a colorful opening credit sequence telling us the distributor, the mastermind, and the title that gets cut short to introduce the audience to the main character, Alex, who wears a prideful yet unnerving smirk on his face, commonly referred to as the Kubrick stare. All of this is accompanied by a brilliant synth score, again composed by Wendy Carlo. There's even a little sprinkle of Dies Irae at some point. But the simple opening title sequence is a common element in nearly all of his films, and, in my opinion, uses this said simplicity to deny the viewers the knowledge of what is to follow, a la Kubrick's final project, Eyes Wide Shut. But I find that point to be faulty for a good chunk of his films, as The Shining has that specific, unnerving score. But I think in that particular stance, he was trying to do something different. Whereas in Eyes Wide Shut, we open gracefully with a joyful score, making you completely ignore the crazy that may follow, I believe The Shining makes you uncomfortable to begin with, to make every scene that follows, no matter how normal it technically may be, feel uneasy, so when the film begins to slowly spiral out of control, the audience is more vulnerable to it and therefore getting a bigger reaction, which is probably why the film failed during its initial release. In conclusion, Stanley Kubrick is one of my favorite filmmakers of all time, and The Shining is currently my #1 film, with its brilliant pacing, gorgeous cinematography that encapsulates the grandiose scale of the Overlook perfectly, and absolutely spectacular performances. The Shining is my ideal horror film, and I can't imagine any other filmmaker than the brilliant Stanley Kubrick taking it on. Wait. There's a 90s version? Mick Garrett? What?